in the highest. Let our King be lifted up.
Somewhat normal, what we thought anyway. I mean, worked for a living and took care of the family, and you know, did things with the family and the wife and the kids, and always wanted, you know, to do more and be more. Other than that, it was drugs and rock and roll. I mean, that was, you know, that's pretty much all I focused on. Was, unfortunately, you know, that's what drove my life, and I think I kind of drug Farrah down with me some, doing those things, and you know, didn't influence my kids any. You know, I remember Savannah when she was young sitting in the back seat, instead of singing
praise and worship, she was
singing
headbanging
you know,
to heavy metal music.
She knew Pantera and Metallica songs and Led Zeppelin songs, and
we had the same interest. We both grew up with God-fearing families, but most of them unfortunately weren't really Christians.
And outside of that, though, our home that we grew up in, there wasn't much actual Christian influence as far as a Bible study or regular church attendance or nothing like that. And there was none in our life. We lived a very secular, filled life, and just the absence of the presence of God, which obviously now I know is a huge, huge thing. Ray's a retired railroader from CSX. I was a 21-year-old drunk dopehead, and he's a 65-year-old retiree. What do we got in common? Absolutely nothing. I actually ended up spending all my time with that guy. I mean, I would go over there and we'd work on his farm, and I'd help him out, and just he was asking me about, he's like, hey, you know how to build things, why don't you come on up and, you know, show me, I got this project in the barn, can you point something out for me? And, you know, sure, you know. All I wanted to do was, you know, I had liquor and dope in the car, and I wanted to go watch the High State game and party with my friends. He didn't really care about the building. All he wanted to know was about me. Didn't bring up nothing about him, and just, you know, wasn't protruding stuff into my life and being, you know, objective or, you know, telling me about it. It was just love. I ended up spending the whole day there, and I ended up leaving about sundown. And we talked about anything and everything. Hardly even talked about church or God, or, you know, he invited me to church and asked me if I had a Bible. And I said, sure, you know, every American has a Bible at home, just about. He said, well, will you come to church? I said, I'll catch on fire. I can't come to church. But he said, well, will you read your Bible this week for me? Just tell me you'll do it. I said, okay, that's fine. So, trying to be a man of my word, I got the Bible up a couple days later at home, and I couldn't open it up. And that thing weighed 1,000,000 pounds. I couldn't open it up if I wanted to. Now I know that I was just under heavy conviction. A buddy of mine, Josh Carpenter, who had just rededicated his life to Christ, came in one day to the house. There was me and Farrah and a few other friends there, and we were sitting around hanging out. We were actually getting high at the time. And pregnant women glow, they say. When he walked into the room, Christ was with him. I mean, the spirit in the room changed. I mean, he was a light in a bunch of darkness. It made me feel like, you know, a granny catches you doing something you shouldn't be doing. That's how I felt, but he hadn't said nothing about it. And then he was there about 10 minutes or so and left. I called him up and I said, hey, I don't know what the heck's going on, but, you know, I talked to Ray, and I seen you come in here acting what I would call weird, you know, strange and different. So out of the blue one day, I asked Farrah, I said, let's go to church Sunday. And that's exactly the response she gave me, like, okay. You know, kind of surprised, but no fighting, no, I don't want to. She wanted to go. The night before church, we threw a cake party at the house and said, well, go out with a bang. And
that was March 31st, 2001. And then on April 1st, 2001, we went to church.
I just know that I felt very strange going in there, and now I know it very convicted. Got a lot of strange looks from, because it's a small community, very small. Got a lot of strange looks from people like, whoa, is that David and Farrah Wood in church? And the next week, we went back to church again. That was the week that I got saved, the second week there. And I remember sitting in the pew, just I didn't know what he was preaching about. I just knew as soon as he got done, I had to go to the altar. I had to do this.
I didn't know what was going on with him. He said, "Oh, I got saved." I'm like, "Oh, that's great." At this time, he was working a lot, especially at night. I would stay up in my bedroom and start to read the Bible to see what this was all about. I think it was probably about a couple weeks later. I was reading the book of Matthew, and all of a sudden, I just felt convicted, and so I closed my eyes and I said a prayer, and I got saved in my bedroom.
Thanks to Ray, thanks to a friend, that's willing to share, and he wasn't a friend at the time. He's just ready and willing to give an account of his joy, and not point fingers and condemn and convict, but just to reach out and help. And that's the biggest thing I learned from Ray is it's great to help lead somebody to Christ, but it ain't over yet. A discipleship, a continuous discipleship of that person until they become solid, mature on their foundation of Christ, then they can do the same to somebody else.
I guess you could say David was Ray's one and I was David's one.
Drastically. All good. Unfortunately, getting saved does have some negative effects. It strains from relationships sometimes to the people that don't understand. It's amazing how you build relationships on partying and high state football games and basketball games and partying while you're barbecuing and everything revolved around partying. But when that fades, there's nothing left. So I'd say our social life has changed quite a bit.
Our marriage definitely is a lot stronger.
Are we perfect? Not even close to being perfect, but we're redeemed, we're forgiven, and we're on the right path. That's all that matters. As long as we stay focused on Him, everything else will fall into place. We're where we're supposed to be at. Continue to grow in Him.
It seemed like before we were saved, we tried so hard, we struggled, and it seemed like forever we tried to reach our goals, and it was just not within our reach. And then as soon as we got saved, it seemed like everything started to fall into place. It seemed like the moment we got saved, everything almost seemed so much more easier to do. David used to smoke cigarettes, and right away it was like he didn't have the urge to smoke any longer. We didn't care that we could no longer party or do drugs or drink. It just instantly disappeared.
I had a guy, about 2 weeks after getting saved, I had a gentleman at work that pointed out that I hadn't cussed in about 3 or 4 days. And I didn't even realize it. A new mind, new creature. Once I believed and I confessed, I was saved and I was different. It's that simple.